Hello, welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. If you do like the programming you see here and the artists and musicians that I visit with, please be sure and hit the like button below and also subscribe to the channel. Harry Sandler is an American drummer, guitarist, singer, and songwriter. He began his musical journey as drummer with the Mods in 1964. The band lasted 3 years, playing many live shows in the New England area. In 1967, Harry would join Orpheus, and the band, as part of the Bosstown Sound, would release 3 albums of material prior to disbanding at the end of 1969. Post-Orpheus, Harry and a friend took off for Portugal. For 3 months, they traveled from Portugal to Spain to Gibraltar, Tangiers to Mauritania, and from Marrakech to Casablanca. At the beginning of the trip, Harry discovered an acoustic guitar in a village store and taught himself to play and locked up the drums permanently. Back home, Harry would become instrumental in starting up Harry Sandler Circus, a loose revolving door amalgamation of musicians and artists, which would later become Harry Sandler Road Show and then Harry Sandler Good Time Show. And my guest is a retired ex-vice president of an international lecture agency. Well, welcome, Harry.
Nice to be here, Greg.
Thank you for taking time out to visit.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
And go back in that time machine, as I like to say.
Oh my goodness. Blink, just like that.
Right. Well, take us back to the beginning. Where were you born?
Born in Brookline, Mass, 1946, makes me 78.
Okay. Hey, you're a mathematician.
I have many fingers and toes.
I'm glad you have all of them still.
I got most of my fingers and toes, enough that I can work with them.
Right. Well, do you have fond childhood memories growing up there?
You know, I do. I mean, they're mixed memories. I grew up in a housing development, multiple units, not a project, if you will, but duplex homes, dozens and dozens of them. And the streets were alive with kids. The backyards were alive with kids. Everybody was out and about playing. Of course, none of us had then what we all have now, which is Game Boys and multiple this and multiple that. And, you know, it was outdoors and street and community, a real sense of community.
Community. I was going to say about that. I've seen, I don't know, it's been going around Facebook, one of these animations, and it showed people at a bar or restaurant, back in the 70s, and they were communal, like you said, 2 or 3 at a table, everybody's talking. And then today, 1 per table, and they're all on their phone,
Yeah. I mean, if you're ever on a bus or if you're ever on a train, everybody is just sitting there with their head down and their eyes on their palm,
Right, right. And one other thing I wanted to comment on was when you talked about being outside and I can remember there's a few years difference here, but I can remember, the doors were never locked. I mean, we would play outside till all hours of the night, and nobody worried so much,
Right.
And keep the windows, doors unlocked, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, I don't expect we're the first of your audience to say it was a bit of a different world, I think.
Yes. Amen to that.
Things have changed.
Yes, they sure have. They sure have. Well, do you remember early on hearing music in the household?
Well, yes, I do. My folks had a Victrola and the speakers on the side of it that folded out. My mother and father kind of listened to Harry Belafonte at Carnegie Hall, show tunes. Uh, the thing that really influenced me or really got my attention was my dad was a drummer long before I was born. And he had his own band, the Art Sens band. And they played big band music, and he was a drummer. And Apparently, he was quite good. And when I came, well, he went in the service and he played in the service bands during World War II. And then he came home and started a family. But he really never went back to playing the drums. So for me, all I heard was, "Oh, your dad was so good. He was so good." And
Yeah.
all I saw were black and white pictures of him in the service or before playing a kit, and I think that that in itself was enough to inspire me to want to, in whatever genetic predisposition was passed along, which I imagine there's something that can be said about that, so, I kind of had a fascination with it, but really never did anything about it till I got into junior high school and took a Friday afternoon. You could either go to a study hall or take an elective, which was taking drum classes. So I
Okay.
took that elective and the very basic rudiments of drumming, rolls, flams, eight-stroke rolls, paradiddles. These are just the rudiments of beginning drumming. And I did that at that point in my life.
Okay. Well, can you recall the first 45 or album that you bought?
It might have been actually the Beach Boys. It might have been the Beach Boys because they came along, I'm going to say 3 years before English music or so.
Yeah.
And I kind of got into that. That created interest. We were from Boston and they were presenting a whole lifestyle that was quite enamoring, if you will.
Yeah.
And so, I got that first album with 409 on it.
Oh, okay. All right. Now I'm going to date myself here, and you can probably position me somewhere in the your past. My first couple were the Royal Guardsmen with the Snoopy versus the Red Baron. You
Oh,
remember
no,
that?
never
Oh,
listened
you
to
don't
that.
recall that?
No,
Okay.
no.
Snoopy for President. Yeah, they had those gimmick albums.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, they had the what was the Alvin and the Chipmunks
Yeah.
that
Yes.
came out of there, and that was a huge, huge campaign for those people.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Well, talk about some other musicians and artists that you were into, say around this same time period.
Uh, I kind of started to focus a little bit on, it was maybe just a little after that. Trying to think, was it high school? At that time of my life, it was that surf music, and it was the Kingsmen, and it was the Righteous Brothers, and shortly after that, I mean, we all started going to record hops. And it's something that I don't know that exists any longer, but you could go hear local music at CYOs, which stood for Catholic Youth Organization, uh, or at high school mixers or college mixers. And there were some ballrooms that were bigger that would bring in the Kingsmen and bring in the traveling bus shows from Motown, the Cavalcade of Stars that got up and did too. And so, there were all these places that we could go to see bands. And so the Kingsmen and the Righteous Brothers, they certainly, uh, it was kind of like a oh wow moment to see them doing that.
Right. So it was the music scene was very much alive.
It was tremendously alive. It
Right.
was, it were, I mean, it's different than the music scene now, but back then, I mean, New England, which is where I'm from, is loaded with colleges, universities, secondary schools, prep schools, high schools, Catholic schools, public schools. And at that particular time, all of them on Friday or Saturday night would have a mixer. And if it wasn't a record hop with the local DJs, it started with the local DJs coming out and playing, spinning records. And then as bands became popular, the DJs would bring along a band to play for 20 minutes in between them spinning their records. So
Right.
the scene was just, it was wonderful. It
Yeah.
was fresh. There, it was a real mixed crowd. People weren't at that point drinking. It was pre-drugs. It was nothing like that. I mean, it was a wonderful and free period where you felt fairly safe.
Right. Right. Kind of an innocent time,
It was very innocent time. I mean, if you see the mixer that Back to the Future that he plays the guitar at, it was like that. It was just it was just doing those songs in those kinds of locations with a
Right.
stage in the auditorium, whatever,
Right.
and it was fun.
Right. I was going to make that comment when I said go back at the time machine, Michael J. Fox earlier, and I forgot to mention that. But yeah, I was going to mention a little bit later on about you talking about the DJs. They were the stars back then
They absolutely were.
at that time. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we had a lot of very strong personalities here. Probably the foremost one was a gentleman by the name of Arnie Ginsberg. Arnie
Yes.
Ginsberg was on a radio station, WMEX, and
Yeah.
he was great, whistles and bells and
Yeah.
all kinds of, he just really loose and goosey.
But,
And he had, he played
yep.
all the latest records, and he was a great guy. And so he would go to all these hops. I'm guessing maybe somebody paid him $200 to come and spin records, and he'd bring along a band.
Yeah. Let me check your memory here. What was Arnie's nickname?
Woo woo.
There you go. Move ahead to the front of the class.
Yeah. Oh, Arnie was a wonderful guy,
Yeah.
and a friend over many years.
Okay. Well, good, good. Well, were the Mods, was that your very first band?
It was my very first band. It was
Okay.
just a bunch of high school kids who had never really even played an instrument.
Yeah.
And the singer, he decided he wanted to start a band, and along with another mutual friend who was a bass player, they said, let's start a band, because they used to harmonize together. And the lead singer said, gee, I know a guy that plays the drums. Well, that's a funny story unto itself, because I'd never actually played the drums, but he came to my house and he said, "Hey, show Paul how you play the drums." So I said, okay. And I put the ottoman in front of the chair and moved the chair and the ottoman in front of the couch. And then I went over to the closet and I got my father's drumsticks that he hadn't played in years and years. And I sat down, and with the three, the ottoman, the chair, and the couch, I went. And he said,
Yeah,
"Want to
there
be
you
in the
go.
band?"
And you got a different sound off of each one too.
Every single one of them. And I said, "Sure, sounds like fun." But that was the summer of
Yeah.
'64.
You passed the audition there.
I
Yeah.
passed the audition, and it's really funny because maybe about 6 weeks ago, I'm still friendly with the lead singer. And I sent them a note and I said, "Hey, Van, whatever made you come to my house and ask me to?" I've known him for
Yeah.
60 plus years, and I never really asked him that. I just went along with it. And that was truly a defining moment in my life. That set the course for bringing me right to here.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the germination period. And he said, well, I knew your dad played drums, so I thought maybe you could.
Yeah.
So he came over the house and you were perfect. And I said,
Yeah.
okay, how bold and brave of you. How bold and brave,
Right.
So that was during the summer, and I saved up some money from working. And I think that December of 64, I went to the local drum store and bought a set of drums, which I basically still have. They're set up in the basement of my home.
Is that right?
It's the only set of drums I ever bought.
Is that
There
right?
are there are musicians that have 50 kits, guitar players that have 500 guitars.
Yeah.
Just one kit,
Yeah.
five-piece Gretsch set,
Yeah.
burgundy sparkle. That was it.
That's all
And
you. Yeah.
it suited me just fine. So I got that set the beginning of December, December 12th. And as the reason I got it was my friend Van, he was in De Malay, which was a fraternal order for kids. And they were putting on a party, and he got the band. He said, well, we'll play at it. Well, we had learned maybe 15 three-chord songs, which is
Uh,
that was it. It was
yeah.
three chords,
Yeah. Right.
And God forbid somebody wanted a minor. You just what's a minor?
It
What's a
didn't.
major seventh? I don't know.
Right. They
I don't
didn't
know.
exist.
We didn't learn that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so we went, and on December 12th, 1964, I bought the drums. December 28th was my first gig with
Oh.
the band actually playing drums.
Oh.
They loved us.
Yeah. 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 I was going to ask you about that. Originally, the band was called the Evergreens.
Well, you know, it depends on who you talk to in the band.
Okay.
You
Okay.
know, you know, Paul thinks it should have been called Paul and and nobody
Okay.
liked the Evergreens, and somebody suggested the Mods, which was a popular name, the Mods and the Rockers in England.
Oh, right. I know. Yeah, like you said, so many bands named the Mods around that time period. Yeah,
Oh
you're
my God, yes.
right. Yeah. Well, well, how did let me ask you about your parents. How did they feel about you taking this journey, starting off in the music business?
Well, I think my dad was extremely proud because of his background, and to see his son start to go down a road that he had to kind of move away from in order to grow up and get a job and start a family and support his family. So he never went back to that period.
Yeah,
So he got a kick out of it,
yeah,
never guessing it was going to go where it went.
yeah, yeah. I imagine he was kind of living vicariously through you. Yeah.
Oh, yes. As time went on, I'm sure that that was a piece of his heart in there.
Right, right. And I'm sure a sense of pride as
Oh
well.
my gosh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, um, you did mention the first time that you played. Do you remember any of the other early gigs, early shows?
Oh yeah, I mean there were lots of churches,
Okay.
Saint Gregory, Saint this, Saint that. And we used to play in these CYO church. Those were the first places that would have us very, very locally.
Okay.
And it started to right away. I mean, I remember we played Gate of Heaven High School in South Boston. That was one of our first gigs. And it was and one of our neighbors was like the president of the class, and he hired us for $100 to play, and they loved us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Right.
and all the girls were standing in front of the stage. And it was like, wow, I think
Yeah.
we're on to something.
Right. Right. I think that's
Whoa,
what I think
whoa,
that's
I
what
can't get a date. but
Right.
now there's really a shot. I got a shot.
Yeah, I think that's what grabbed the attention of a lot of young musicians with the Beatles.
Absolutely.
The Beatles seeing all those girls just going crazy. Yeah, yeah,
Well, and again, as an aside to that story we talked about earlier about people in an audience viewing things differently than, so I'm sure that many of those girls really took a fondness to those groovy guys up there as they were growing their hair, as they were wearing those psychedelic clothes. But conversely, their boyfriends hated them.
yeah. Right.
or the guys at the school or
Yeah,
they wanted to take us out into the
yeah.
parking lot and let
Right,
us know who was getting the girls.
right, right,
So it's
right.
kind of, I was just being me, but that's just a funny thing about life.
Yeah,
You be you, but people imprint you differently.
imprint. That's a good word. Well, what were some of the cover tunes that went down well playing live?
Money, Louie Louie, Jolly Green Giant, um, Twist and Shout, Shout.
Yeah,
Those were all just really great little dance numbers, and everybody could just, it was truly like a metamorphosis. That period, I mean, the period before was the Elvis generation, and I don't know how wild they got because I wasn't a part of it. I've seen enough of it, but at this point, my generation, the baby boomers, we were just letting it all hang out. And so you could work up a sweat and you could dance in the band, shout and shout,
yeah,
and they'd
yeah.
play it for 25 minutes and you'd be
Right,
dancing like you're sweating and wringing out your shirt. I mean, and it
right.
was like a rite of passage. It was
Yeah,
truly like a rite of passage. Everybody up there. This is like, say, just a little pre that. I went to all these dances in armories, they had them. And I was one of the ones in the middle of the crowd dancing up like a storm. And it was cathartic.
yeah.
And
Right.
so we tried to do the same thing. We do some Everly Brothers songs, Dream. Oh gosh, the list went on and on. Um, the current songs of the day,
Yeah,
Kinks songs when we were playing, all cover tunes and primarily the English music, House of
yeah.
the Rising Sun,
Oh, right. The
the
animals were great.
animal songs, all of that stuff.
Eric Burden. Yeah. Well,
Eric Burden, yeah, absolutely.
talk about playing the Rathskeller or the Rat. Yeah.
Well, at that point, it was the Rathskeller. Are you familiar with that venue and with people that you've spoken to?
No, no. This is the first time it's come up. Yeah.
So the Rathskeller was a college beer club. It was really a club downstairs from a bar. Somebody figured it was a good idea, and they had bands down there. And somehow we got a gig there playing for a whole summer, um, every Wednesday. And some of the other bands there were 5 bands that played at that time. One of them was a group called Burying the Remains.
The Remains. Yes.
Burying the Remains went on to be the opening act for the last Beatles tour.
Yes. Yes.
And there was a group called The Lost. They were the equivalent of the Rolling Stones in Boston at that time. Really funky, really interesting looking, nothing pretty boy about them. We'd be dressing in mod clothing and they'd be dressed like, whoa, these guys are bad.
Yeah.
I don't even know where you get that kind of clothes. And it was a great scene, and it was just a beer hall.
Right.
So, from there, we kind of tightened our act. We played 3 sets. We had gotten another guitar player in the band at the time and a second guitar player. By then, it was 5 people. And, there was really only one of us and he was a 14-year-old kid at that point, and he was wicked good guitar player.
Yeah.
And we went to him and we said, "Hey, you're the bass player in this band. How'd you like to lose these guys and be the lead guitarist in a band that's going someplace?"
Right.
These are your typical teen
Yeah.
stories, you know.
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah." And, we'd have to pick him up because he didn't drive and sneak him into a place like the Rathskeller.
Yeah.
And it was fun and it was great. And they loved us.
Right.
Everybody loved us because the guys sang well.
Yeah.
And that's really what started the Mods.
Okay.
But the music, it came together because it was pretty simple. Three
Yeah.
chords, nothing difficult, no difficult rhythms for the drummer. It was just straight ahead, Charlie Watts, Rolling Stone time. So we
Okay.
played there for a whole summer and then got good enough that we were asked to come out to another place, a small place on the outskirts of Boston in Taunton. And we played there for quite a while. And what started out as 75 people on a Friday night, by the time we left there, every night that it was open, there were 750 to 1,000 kids there.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Then we moved on to a place called the Surf. And the Surf was just one of those ballrooms from the 30s and 40s that big bands used to play in. But
Yeah.
now the local entrepreneur saw how this teen music was really
The
where it was
opportunity, the
at.
opportunity there.
This is
Yeah.
what's happening. And
Yes.
so he signed up a whole bunch of bands, local bands,
Yeah.
and rotated us. And there turned out to be 3 of these surfs. So now we're playing south of Boston, and then we're playing up on the North Shore. There was a surf, and then on Cape Cod there was a surf. So now we start to spread out
Yeah.
in New England, and all these bands are rotating. And on a Saturday night at the surf in the Boston in Nantasket Beach, there'd be 1,200 kids packed into there.
Yes. Yes. Right.
So
And your fan base started to develop and grow.
it grew enormously.
Yeah. Yeah.
The band was good. The guys sang well. We did the current hits of the day. Other bands would be playing R&B. We'd
Uh-huh.
be playing this kind of real straight ahead white boys rock and roll,
Yeah.
Other bands, it would be a Motown or, whatever, horn. There was a horn band. So it covered all the bases. They brought in all these bands, and it turned out to be a great place. And I really developed as a drummer, first of all.
Yeah.
And second of all, a lot of people saw me, and I turned out to be a fairly good showman. And that was important. A lot of people sit there. I was kind of big, I guess.
Yeah.
I was just having a good time.
Right.
I
Right.
wasn't forcing it. I was having a good time. And this has been told to me over the years.
Yeah.
You always look like you were having a good time.
Yeah.
I was just having so much fun.
I think that translates. I was going to say that translates well to the audience if they see the band
Absolutely.
enjoying themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so
Right.
over the years, I'm amazed at the people that remember something that took place 1964,
Yeah.
1965.
Right.
Come on, that's like a million years ago. I remember people,
Yeah.
and with the internet, is this
Yeah.
Harry Sandler who used to blah blah? I say, yeah,
Yeah.
I am. Wow, I remember, and I'm like, wow, I'm humbled. I'm humbled that people
Right.
remember, and that it had such an impact. This group
Yeah.
of guys that just were
You did.
exploring, expressing themselves.
You did have an impact. Well, you mentioned just a bit ago about Charlie Watts.
Yep.
In '66, the band won the Battle of the Bands competition,
Yes, we
and
did.
as a result, got to open for
The Rolling Stones. Now, it was tremendously exciting. I mean, we played in a battle of bands and went through 2 or 3 rounds. Now, at that point, we had a pretty good fan base from all of those CYOs and all of those ballroom dates and all those high school mixers. And so our fans followed us to this battle of the bands, and we won.
Yeah.
So the next thing we know, we are the opening act at the Manning Bowl, which is a now defunct football stadium, and it was just amazing. It was for 19-year-old kids now, or 19 or 20-ish, it was mind-blowing. And there was no place to put us, but they put us actually in the dressing room with the Stones. And we were just like beside ourselves
Yeah.
because they were small.
Yeah.
They're very small. They're very tiny. I mean, Ringo Starr, he's a very small guy,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they're bigger than life because they affected the world.
Right.
But
Right.
when you walk into a dressing room and you look around and this is like, hey man, did they cut your legs down? What happened there? But we spent a couple of hours in a dressing room and it was fun and it was great. And we went on and did our
Yeah.
set, and we were
Who
welcomed.
who was the most outgoing of the stuff?
Charlie was actually quite friendly.
Yeah.
Sure, if all of us didn't key in on somebody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
I just know that Charlie, me being a drummer, him being a drummer, he was just a really nice guy, very warm,
Yeah.
which ultimately he always was right up until the time he passed away. He was very approachable,
Approachable. I like that.
very approachable guy.
Well, that show, what other bands were on that bill?
The McCoys were on that. They had Hang On Sloopy at that time. Uh, gosh, I know there are a couple of other bands.
Standells.
The Standells, they were on that. Yeah, Dirty Water, which is
Yeah.
big favorite around Boston.
Right.
And there are a couple of other bands there too.
Yeah.
And it was amazing
Yeah.
until the Stones came on stage.
Right. Tell that story. Tell that
The
story.
Stones came on stage and they were doing their thing. And they were just going at it. In the audience, I mean, it was it's that period, it still enamors me when I look at videos of that period. The Beatles didn't have any monitors. The Rolling Stones didn't have any monitors. They had little small amplifiers behind them, and they couldn't hear themselves singing because there weren't monitors on the floor coming up at you. There weren't monitors from the side. It was just the back stuff. The drummer couldn't hear any of the singing, but they did their thing, and they were in the audience, and there wasn't a sophisticated security system. There were wooden horses, those wooden horses in
Yes.
front of the stage, and
Yes.
5 or 6 Boston policemen standing there like this.
Yeah.
The audience flipped out and started to charge the stage.
Wow.
And the police freaked out and they fired tear gas. And everybody was going crazy. And the band was going crazy. And
Yeah.
they were right in the middle of doing Sweet Lady Jane. And the smoke was like everywhere. People were flipping out. And Brian got up. I was standing right at the back of the stage watching them from right behind the drum kit. And Brian came over and handed me the dulcimer.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
And they all got off stage, got in a van. They waved. He waved at me,
Yeah.
and they drove off.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that
Wish
something?
I wish I'd kept that dulcimer.
That's a
I
nice
mean,
instrument. I
but I'm
like.
not like that. Greg, I'm an
Yeah,
honest guy.
you're an
I'm
honest guy.
an honest guy.
You're
You
right.
know,
Well, that's
boy,
what.
I would have liked to have kept that.
Yeah, because the dulcimer, it takes that drumming technique to play it. That's
Well,
what
it's rhythms. It's
it's really. Yes,
all, it's
that's
a
what. Yeah,
strum and a
yeah,
rhythm, and it's like,
yeah, yeah.
and I gave it
Yeah.
to Stewart, I forget his Ian Stewart, I think was his name,
Oh,
their
okay.
road manager, who also at the time played piano on
Right.
many of their early tracks.
Oh,
And he packed up all the equipment, put it in a truck, and they all drove off.
wow. And unfortunately for the Stones, that would haunt them and follow them around to other shows. Those kind of, audience
Oh,
reactions like
well,
that.
I think that started, it was not new to hear. Maybe it was new to hear, but
Yeah.
it was kind of like that over in England. I mean, everything we read about it
Mhm.
was Beatlemania in the
Right.
Stones, where the audiences were freaking out by them.
Right. Right. Altamont, and
Well, that got even crazy.
even crazier.
Mhm.
Well, you also opened for the Dave Clark Five, which is one of my favorites.
Dave Clark Five, the Young Rascals,
Oh,
the
yes.
Barbarians, um, a lot of people who have since become iconic in nature,
Yeah.
legendary and iconic bands. And that was how I cut my teeth as a performer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were playing in front of big audiences, and people were responding, and we knew what we had to do. And the guy, like I say, the guys sang, I jumped around,
Yeah.
the energy was good, the vocals were good, nothing original, but again, this is a whole group of people, kids that really had never heard live music.
Right. Right.
And, I mean, I guess my parents would have listened to Benny Goodman, but then
Yeah.
when you went to see Benny
Yeah.
Goodman and you went to see Count
Yeah.
Basie, that band is swinging and the horn, there's nothing like live music. And so
There's not.
that was how that whole world
Yes, making that
started to morph.
you making that immediate connection with the audience. It's just
Absolutely. You could feel it. You could
yes,
sense
yes,
it.
tangible.
you
Yes,
you were
very.
a part you were a part of it. It was really, and as the time went on, the equipment got better. So
Yeah,
you were able to turn it up louder and it was pounding the audience even more.
right, right.
And so you feel that bass, you feel
Yes,
those drums. Guitar player learns how to really play the guitar.
yeah.
You go, wow, what the hell was that? So you you just like we were, what's the word I want? We were inspired by
Yeah,
that first wave of English bands that we watched so closely.
yeah.
The whole next group of musicians were inspired by us and that group of
Right,
people.
right,
So
right.
just to regress just for a second,
Sure.
the Rathskeller later goes on to becoming a tremendously hip local bar with like lots of punk bands. And one group starts there that develops, and they're famous for it. There's two groups that came out of there, probably a lot more, but the two that you'll know about, early grounds for the Cars.
Yeah,
Cars started it. By then, it was the Rat, not the Rathskeller,
right.
and Aerosmith.
Yes, and
They all played
I'm
there.
sorry to interrupt. I just thought of something. There was a band before the Cars that Rick and
Ben,
Ben were in. Was it Milkwood? Was it Milkwood?
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
I know that they were around at that time.
right.
That was post my playing. That's like about 72.
Yeah, right,
So we're sort of at 67 that we're talking about Dave Clark.
right.
So we'll get up to there, but I
Yeah,
regress. The Rathskeller is starts, and becomes the Rat, and that builds an entire different, it's like CBGB's in New York and Nantuan's or wherever, all of these places, become fertile ground for the next scene, the next
Yeah.
kind of music.
Let me ask you this. Were you guys just, was it being too young at the time? Uh, was there any record labels biting or any interested in getting you guys to record or anything like that with the
None.
mods? Okay, okay,
None, because the band was primarily a cover band.
okay,
There
okay,
were two songs. There was one song that the guitarist, the 14-year-old, by now he's 16,
okay,
and he wrote uh, one song called Won't Shed a Tear.
okay.
And so we went into a studio and recorded Won't Shed a Tear and Stop You Sobbin', which was the Kinks tune that was
Yeah,
later covered by the Pretenders.
right, right.
And we didn't know what to do with it. We had a manager at the time, the guy that booked us into that club that started as 75 people and then became 750 people. I mean, he saw that we had something and he put us in the studio, but I don't think that he ever shopped anything because candidly, I don't think we weren't that kind of a band. We were one of 10 billion cover bands.
Right, right. So it just never came to fruition.
Right.
Yeah. So how long after the band broke up did you well did you helped form Orpheus, right? You were there at the beginning. Yeah.
Yes, I was,
How long in between that?
well, I had reached a point in the summer of 67 where I was kind of getting tired of what the mods were doing. They weren't practicing a lot, they weren't growing, we were doing the same songs. It was getting by rote, and I really was looking for something new, something fresh. So I went to the manager of the band at the Surf where we played at that point, and that was the ballroom, one of those ballrooms. And I said, Brian, I just really need something else. He
Yeah.
said, I'll keep my eyes open. 2 weeks later, a guitar player wandered into a music store and he went to the drummer and he said, I'm looking for a drummer. We're starting an original band. We do only our own music. And the guy in there in the music store said, well, why don't you call the Surf and talk to this guy, Brian? And so he calls, talks to Brian. Brian says, wow, I just happen to know one guy. He's a good drummer. Whatever he said, and I'll have him call you. So he called me up and he said, I found a band that might be interested in you playing. So I called up this guy and he was part of a trio. They were actually a folk duo that reached, they were a folk duo that was called the Villagers, and they were voted best folk duo by the major folk magazine Broadside. They were voted best folk duo in 1966 and 1967. But just like Dylan, just like the Byrds, just like the Mamas and Papas, people were getting tired of that folky acoustic sound, and they decided the villagers wanted to grow. So they contacted a friend that they had that played bass, and well, we got to find a drummer. So Jack goes in this music store. The music store says, call the Surf. The Surf says, Harry will call you. I see them on a Wednesday. They live out in Worcester, which is about 50 miles from here. by Friday, we were banned.
Is that right?
Well, I love their music.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
love their music.
Yeah.
And the style that they played, it wasn't just there's a meeting here tonight. They were doing
Yeah.
original songs with chordings and
Yeah.
words. I mean, it was really the music was way different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the bass player, he was more of a bass guitarist
Okay.
as opposed to bass player holding the bottom, keeping
Yeah.
the bottom together.
Right.
He
Right.
was all over the neck going noodly, 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 which we didn't have any lead instruments. They were just singers and they sang wonderful. The three of them sang amazing. But there were no leads, so
Yeah.
it left a lot of space and it kind of pushed me into becoming a different drummer.
Okay.
Instead of staying in the pocket like you do with many tunes, I was using the kit as a machine, as a full instrument,
There you go.
doing fills,
Yes.
very similar as what Keith Moon did with the Who,
Right.
because Pete Townsend wasn't playing noodly, noodly, noodly. He was playing rhythms.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And John Entwistle was, it was like that. So where it leaves an opening, it allows for a drummer to fill
Bill, there you
to
go.
fill it. So I became a different kind of a
Yeah.
drummer.
Yeah.
On top of already being kind of visual,
Yeah.
I started to become a little bigger in personality on
Right.
stage. It was just a natural, I was just having a grand old time.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
with the four guys now that were Orpheus,
Yes. Yes.
we practice, practice, practice. And to make a long story short, we got some interviews and we got 9 offers for record deals
Whoa. Whoa.
within 2 months of being
Two.
together as a band.
Yeah.
Never happens like this.
No.
It was
No.
it
No.
was truly destiny.
Yes.
Things are meant in life to happen.
Right. Right. Well, let me
And
ask you about the band itself. Did you guys have similar taste, similar influences? The members?
no, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that I had fairly broad sense of stuff. They came out of that jug band music, folk music, that
Yeah.
there's a meeting here tonight,
Yes.
Charlie and the NTA, it was like that was like a real pop, the Kingston Trio, all of that stuff. They came out of that. The bass player had a little bit more of a background in black music. He played at one point, some R&B, but the four of us created something that was just different. It was really a very different sound.
Right. I've always liked the name Orpheus too, and the origins of that, where it comes from. But who penned the name? Who came up with that?
Um, Eric, Eric, the bass player, he was quite astute he was a man of words and
Yeah.
poetry, and
Yeah.
he knew the story of Orpheus going to get Eurydice out of hell, and he knew the story, and he said, this would be a good name for us, and
Yeah.
just a single name, and it was
It
fine.
did. It did. It really kind of characterized the band, like I said, your sound and everything. Uh, almost almost sounding like you were a British band or something other than American.
Well, some people have said to me, wow, you guys were like the East Coast version of these association, or
Oh,
you guys were like the East Coast version of the Birds, who were all a folk act. But those guys had leads and stuff. The association didn't. They were all about harmonies. And
yes, yeah.
so we would have been the equivalent of the East Coast version of the association.
Yes, I hear that. I hear that in the music. Um,
Real good harmonies, but the chordings that Jack and Bruce had for the music that they were writing
Yeah.
was very different. It wasn't just here's a G, here's a C, here's a D. You
Right.
know, those are every he was finding chords and he had a stretch on his hands that were almost like jazz chords with overtones and the combination finger picking and strumming and capoing the guitar. I mean, the sound was very unique.
Yes, it was. Yes. And you guys were very accomplished too. I got to say that, musicians.
You're familiar with the music before you met me?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Especially Can't Find the Time.
Yep.
That is to this day is one of my all-time favorite songs from any generation, any decade, with the the melodic harmony laden sound by any American band.
Well, thank
It,
you.
yes, it's a wonderful, wonderful
It's
track.
always interesting
Yeah,
that a song or when a song stands the test of time.
yeah, yeah,
Because so many songs come and go, and people go, well, I never
yeah.
heard of that. Oh, at the
Right,
time, I mean, we're really a
right.
one-hit wonder.
Yeah, yeah. You could
And,
you could say
we charted heavily on the East Coast, major charting on the Northeast, and we did 3 albums and
yeah.
boom.
You mentioned the association. Can't Find the Time and Never My Love are two of my top.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, they resonate. You can feel
Yes. Yeah.
something with them. The harmonies are
Yeah.
really good. Windy or
Yeah. Yeah. Cherish.
cherish,
Cherish. Yeah.
cherish is
Yeah.
just stands the test of time.
Yeah. You know what? For me, being a music fan, just the goosebumps that you get, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah,
That's the mark of a great song. If you get those, it's the emotion that you feel.
yeah.
Listening to
Well, I'm just a guy that has gone through life and done all of these things. I don't really think much in a certain way, but it never stops. What's the best way of saying it? I won't say amusing me, but I'm always humbled, humbled when people come up to me and find out
Yeah.
who I was. I don't know, who was I? You're the drummer from, and
Yeah.
it's like
Yes.
that was like 50 years ago.
Right.
It's so
Yeah.
it's quite amazing how
Right.
music can imprint people
Right.
and affect people.
Well, I told you in the email going back,
Yep.
I reached out to the Orpheus website and I was wanting to talk to an original member, still. So I'm glad you finally got, I got through.
Well, I'm sorry to say that two of the four of us
I know.
have since passed away.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Well, on that first album,
Yep.
the 68 album,
Yep.
self-titled, I also like I've Never Seen a Love Like This. That's
I
another
love that song.
yes.
I
Yeah.
love that song. That was always the opening tune of our show.
Oh, was it?
And it was just, I mean, it just pushed, it
Yeah.
really pushed.
And with the brass section, it predates Chicago. It sounds like what they were starting to work on.
Well, a mutual friend about a year later came up to me and said, hey, you guys put out a new album with horns?
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
Turns out what he was hearing was the very first CTA, they were
Transit
called.
Transit Authority. Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. And it was Robert Lamb's voice sounded exactly like Bruce's voice.
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
Bruce had that really waiting for the sun to, Lamb had that, they were deep, I guess it's a baritone. And I mean, they sounded identical. And,
yeah,
he had a really good voice.
yeah. And also from that first one, I also like "I'll Stay with You." It's another really nice track.
Yeah, I still like that. At one point, the band kind of came back together 15 years ago. Some of us, not all of us, because we didn't all live here. And we
Yeah,
used to do that song. And I always enjoyed doing that song.
yeah. The second album, Ascending, came out later that same year. Yeah,
Came
and,
out later that same year. It
yeah,
was more what the band sounded like live and layered with instruments, whereas the first album, we got buried somewhat with all the orchestration that was put on by the producer. He took what we did and he picked the pieces he liked and he wrote music and orchestrated it based on the rhythms, the finger picking, the chordings. And what you get is you get a marriage of music,
yeah,
or the four Orpheuses and the producer and his talent, and bam, now you have something totally different, which is that first album.
yes. I like off of that second one. I like Just a Little Bit. Remember that track?
Really good track. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's another one. In '69 came the third album, Joyful, and it included the single Brown Arms in Houston. Now, what's the story behind that
It
song?
was, it was starting to be, two of the guys got married. The immediacy of being together and writing songs and spending time together, like many bands. I mean, this is not the first time you've heard this story. The band starts to drift away. And so we weren't coming up with tunes. And so we needed tunes for a third album. I mean, we weren't writing them. And so the producer, Alan, he found that song and thought it would be really good for Bruce's voice. And Jack sang a piece in it too. And again, it was, we laid down our tracks, and when you finally get the album, it's all orchestrated, and you wonder where the fuck our tracks are.
Right,
Hey,
right.
I don't,
Yeah, yeah.
excuse me, I
That's
don't,
all.
excuse
That's
me,
all right.
excuse me, I don't really hear myself anymore. Am I still there? Oh, yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, don't
Okay,
worry.
right.
I fixed it in the mix.
Yes, right. Do you have a monitor there in front of you, Harry?
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, right.
Right.
Sure,
You can watch that. Well, Houston, was that referring to Houston, Texas?
It was,
Okay. That was all right. All right. That was
yeah.
my wondering about that. Well, I also like By the Size of My Shoes. Nice chorus. Not
Yeah,
very.
that was another song that somebody got
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of other tunes on that album. I Can Make the Sun Rise.
Oh, okay. All
That
right.
was a pretty good tune that I like, going back. It's been ages since I've thought about it.
Yeah. Well, I know you weren't still in the band for the '71 album. That
No,
was that was like a
late 69,
right.
the love
Yeah.
changed.
Okay.
And it became what started as truly
Right.
our band
Yeah.
became no, it's my band and you're my backup group.
Right.
But having the years to look back, the sum
Yeah.
was better than the
Better
parts.
than the parts. Yeah.
The
Right.
sum
Yeah.
was a good little band.
Yeah.
I'm still proud of what we did and
Right.
how
Well,
we all merged and created a product, a sound, something meaningful.
yeah.
Each of us had gone on to do other things, including the lead singer,
Yeah.
and it just didn't really work.
Right.
So
I,
2
I
years later, he put out
right.
another album, called it Orpheus,
Yes.
but it really was just him
Just him with a new band. Yeah.
with a new group of people.
Yeah.
I always, I don't quite, I guess I do know how to say this. I don't know why Mike Love doesn't just go out as Mike Love, not
Right,
as the Beach
right,
Boys. I
right.
I don't see a Wilson anywhere on the stage.
Yeah, right. It's just, yeah, you're right.
I mean, I'm respectful of it, but it's in that
I,
case, he's
I
got a
think,
catalog of tunes he could go
right,
out
he
and
does. He does. I think it's that name recognition. I think Beach Boys,
yeah,
you know,
it's going to
right,
sell a whole lot more tickets
right,
than.
riding those coattails. Yeah, I think that's probably a part of it. Yeah,
Mhm.
but I did want to mention, I know you weren't on that 71 album, but my favorite track is Tomorrow Man. That's a really, I don't know if you remember that one at all, but that
Oh,
was,
I thought it was a really good album. My
yeah.
favorite track on that album was a tune called Big Green Pearl.
Oh, okay. All right.
That was done actually twice.
Yeah.
And the new band
Yeah.
was one of the new members was somebody that had written songs for the old band. We did
Oh,
three of this guy's songs on the first album.
yeah.
And so Bruce asked him to join the band and found other people. And they did a fourth album.
Okay. Yeah. Well, speaking of live shows, while you guys were together, you opened some for some pretty big name acts like The Who and Zeppelin, Led Zeppelin. Yeah.
I've had the pleasure of being on probably 10 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame shows with artists that have become Rock Hall of Famers. And Janis Joplin, Big Brother and the Holding Company at Tanglewood.
Yeah.
Tanglewood is a very big, prestigious outdoor. Boston Pops play there, Boston Philharmonics, Leonard Bernstein started out there. I mean, it's a very prestigious place, a big lawn and, over a tent. And we did that show. We did 3 dates with The Who. And we opened, it's a now very well-known story and probably one of the odder bookings. I have a few odd bookings in my Orpheus was bittersweet harmonies, just lovely flowers and lightness. And we opened up for Led Zeppelin. And it's like the booking just was like the great. I mean, it is somewhat legendary
Uh-huh.
from for Led Zeppelin fans around New England.
Yeah, that's right.
So, so
Yeah.
that I mean, I've played with so many acts on bills. Like I said, the Rascals out in University of Toledo, 10 years after.
Oh, Elvis.
I really, there's just been a long, long, long history of good
I would have
shows.
loved to have talked to Alvin Lee before he passed. That's another,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, I tell people doing this, I said, I wish I would have started this 10, 20 years ago. Because there's
yeah,
so many that have passed that,
yeah. Oh,
yeah,
absolutely. And it's accelerating.
yes, yes it is.
It's
Yes it is.
accelerating. We're reaching that point where we've reached the place where we're supposed to go. What do we have in common with an iPhone?
Yeah. What is that?
When they created this,
Yeah.
it was created with planned obsolescence in mind.
Right.
When we were born,
Yes. That's right.
planned obsolescence, there is no upgrade.
That's right. That's right. We only have a certain shelf life, right?
That's correct. That's exactly it. And so um, we're going to be seeing every week, we see people that we know that were our cultural heroes,
Right.
actors, athletes, musicians, poets,
Right.
authors.
Yeah. The final band member just passed away.
Um, Garth Hudson,
Oh, Garth, yeah. It was
Garth Hudson, the
not,
keyboardist.
yeah, yeah,
Life has changed. Life has changed. I can remember 10 o'clock at night going out to
yeah.
listen to music.
Right, right.
Now
Exactly.
at 10 o'clock at night, you're going to find me in bed.
Right.
You would
Exactly.
be
Exactly.
some cultural icon.
Yeah. Well, I did want to hear, it's very interesting to me about your trip. Who was the friend that you accompanied you on that 3 month trip that you took?
Oh, he's an artist. He's a photographer. He was like an older brother to me. He lives on Martha's Vineyard. His name was Dick Icavello. We connected and became very close friends at that time of life. And when the band broke up, when Orpheus broke up, we were actually going to take a holiday to Jamaica. And instead of I waited around for a week. Nobody called me. Turned in my round trip ticket to Jamaica, and we bought one-way tickets to Portugal. And we took the train down through Portugal to Gibraltar, over to Tangiers, down to Casablanca, over to Marrakech, and ended up on the coast to a village called Essaouira, a city called Essaouira in Morocco. And it was a great time. It was just freedom and just it
Life,
was
life changing in many ways, especially with the discovering that acoustic guitar. Yeah.
correct. There was a now I had certainly found the acoustic guitar long before that period. The young kid in the mods, he used to show me chords, and then I spent a lot of time with Bruce and Jack, and they were wonderful guitar players. And how'd you do that? What chord is that? Where did you? And so I learned a different set of stylings, if you will. And then when I had enough of a knowledge of it, that when this guitar popped up in the little town we were in, everybody be gathering together at night, smoking a lot of hash, and
Yeah.
just sitting there and playing and raga type, you know, was real easy to sit on one chord for 45 minutes. It's kind of interesting, not to go off on too much of a wrong direction, but
Right.
that particular stuff has become very popular in medicine now.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a tremendous amount of PTSD and
Right.
depression and
Right.
anxiety,
Right.
and the medical world is finding that psilocybin
Yeah. Yeah.
mushrooms,
There's another.
when
Yeah. Yeah.
treated by a doctor,
Right.
have helped quite a few returning veterans who have shell shock, PTSD, or
That's
alcoholics. And
right.
it's becoming a very, very important tool to
Yes.
help
Yeah.
people get back into their center.
Right.
Back then, it was just
It was just for fun. It
it
was
was
just.
like, oh, let the good
Yeah.
times
Well,
roll.
yeah. Well, like you said, the LSD. I just talked to a guy 2 or 3 interviews ago talking about that. A British musician, and saying, how it was starting to be used in, like you said, medicinal
Absolutely.
purposes, and then they stopped that. Then they
Yeah.
stopped that. And I said, well, if there's any chance now here, it's going to be mixed. Isn't that?
There's a movie that is out right now
Yeah,
called Queer, and
yeah.
it's with Daniel Craig, who played James Bond
James Bond. Yeah,
in a bunch of movies. So the
yeah,
first part of the movie starts off with him in his developing a relationship with someone. The
yeah.
second part of the movie is him and his partner in search of, it's called Huayasca. It's a psychedelic that the Peruvians make a tea out of, with
Okay.
all of the green, the plant based. It's a plant based
Yes, yeah.
psychedelic, and
Right.
he's in search of this plant. The whole rest of the movie is like an acid trip. So it
Oh,
may
wow.
it may
It's
seem
called
kind
it's
of
called
weird going
Queer.
into it. queer. Well, I'm not sure I'm going to get into that,
Right, the name.
but
Yeah,
open-mindedness. And
yeah,
then it turned out to be
right,
all about him using to
right,
find himself.
right.
So it was
Yeah,
kind of interesting.
yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so it was really easy sitting there playing 2, 3 chords
Mhm.
and tuning it different tunings and just playing, and everybody would be sitting there and we'd be drinking, tea that was laced with poppies, and I mean hash brownies and smoking, chilling. And so everybody's wasted, and
Yeah.
but it was really, really a wonderful experience.
Well, let's get back, and I wanted to hear about the communal style of Harry Sandler Circus. You know.
Well, I mean, it was just in the early 70s. I came back from Morocco. A bunch of us rented an apartment. It was a 4 bedroom, 2 bathroom, and it turned into quite a scene. Quite a scene. At any given time, there'd be like 12 people living there on couches. We had lofts in each of the bedrooms, 2 people up on the top, two on the bottom, one on a couch. And it was a great scene. And so, musicians, I mean, at that point, the notoriety of my immediate past with Orpheus
Yeah.
was dripping all off of me. And so people came by and wanted to hang out and they wanted to play. And we had great jam sessions and put together any number of bands. Eventually, my roommates bought the building and we built a recording studio and rehearsal room in the basement of this building. And I ended up renting it to people that I knew because I knew so many people. And Aerosmith started Toys in the Attic there, Maria Muldaur, Weather Report. There were just so many people because there weren't any real rehearsal rooms. That wasn't a part of the scene. Just
Yeah.
like at one point there weren't monitors.
Yeah. So going back to that, right?
I mean, the
Yeah.
scene develops and morphs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what were some of the places the circus played? Yeah.
All the local clubs opened up for Steve Miller at Lowell State College, opened up for just countless people. There are just lots and lots of bands and local bands, name people. I mean, in the course of my life, I've opened up for Lawrence Ferlinghetti, poet from the 60s.
Okay.
And that was just me and a horn player.
Okay.
Opened up for Martin Mull and his fabulous furniture.
Oh, yes.
Opened up for Hunter S. Thompson.
Wow.
And
Another icon. Yeah.
so just all these bands, all these people, I knew a lot of people. They knew me. I had some degree. I'm not going to flatter myself to think that I was a drawer, but I had good opening act status.
Right. Right. Right.
And so we played, and I eventually got tired of the Boston scene and moved to California.
Well, why was the move to LA?
Well, get tired of the cold, you get tired of the winter. The winters in Boston were a lot more severe than they are now.
Yeah.
Very, cold, a lot of snow. And one of my friends and I decided we would go out there. We went out there and I created and went through a whole nother scene, more bands, recording with lots and lots of people,
Yeah.
big names, just being creative, writing more and more songs, and playing just clubs and some concerts, and
Yeah.
I mean just anything and everything. Didn't make any difference.
Yeah. Talk about the difference in culture from LA and Boston.
Well, I mean, Boston, I think I was aware of it was a lot more of a diverse musical community. At that time, maybe just before that. So when I got out there, the LA Sound was like kind of happening, and everything was kind of a lot slicker.
Yeah, yeah,
You didn't get the same kind. I'm sure there were jazz clubs,
yeah,
but I wasn't that astute, and so I had my own degree of box that I was into musically. But there were folk scenes because that's where Jackson Brown came
yeah.
from.
Right,
There
right.
were
Oh,
folk scenes because that's where Crosby, Stills, and Nash came from.
right.
There was folk scenes because that's where Joni Mitchell came from.
Yeah, right.
So it developed, and of course, as we look at it now, it was a very, very productive and creative period, and the industry grew to a point where they were able to recognize the talent that these people had, and the scene grew incredibly.
Oh, yeah. Let me ask you this. Did you have any run-ins or run across the Eagles while you were out there?
Um,
Any of the
Not
members?
really. I mean, I had secondhand. One of my best friends. Now, see, when you've been in the entertainment world for 60 years and you can remember,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, yeah, if you can remember some of the people from like way
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
So that surf that I played in 1965 and 66 and 67, there were a lot of bands, and one of the bands was a group called the Sandals.
Okay.
Sandal, not the
Not
Standouts, the
standouts.
Sandals. And
Okay.
the bass player in that band was a guy that early on decided he wanted to get out of Boston. So he went to California, got a job as a promo man, and he was a promo man for Geffen Records.
Okay.
And he was the promo man that broke the Eagles' first records with
Oh,
Take
all
It
right.
Easy
Yeah.
and the Peaceful Easy Feeling. His
Yeah.
name is Paul Ahern.
Okay.
Paul Ahern.
Okay.
Let's see how good you are. Does that
That,
name ring
that
any
rings, it
bell?
does ring a little bell. It does. Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
can you?
But I don't know where it comes from though.
So Paul Ahern becomes a very, very popular, successful promo man.
Okay.
Very, very successful. But he has not forgotten about the the past, and he still maintained friendships with people that also left the band scene and went into promotion. That would be a good place for people to go, record promotion. And one of his friends brought him a tape and said, these guys are great.
Yeah.
And Paul went, wow. And so he stopped what he was doing as a promo man. He founded a management company, and he and that guy took those tapes to Epic Records, and they discovered and signed the band Boston.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
the the, the fun part of the journey,
Yeah. Yeah.
the fun part is to see the threads of
Right.
this rich tapestry that
Right.
we've all been a part of. Some people, I mean, when I was in Orpheus, there was a band called Ultimate Spinach.
Ultimate spinach. Yes. Right.
And so one of my best friends, and he recorded with me. I mean, longer story, but I'll really make it succinct. One of my best friends was in the second or third iteration of that band, and we became friendly, and we have stayed friendly. And he left that band and went on to be the co-founder of Steely Dan, and then went into the Doobie Brothers. And that person, it's Skunk Baxter.
Skunk Baxter. Yes. Yes. Of
So,
course.
all these people
Jeff Baxter. Yeah, Jeff
Yeah,
Baxter.
Jeff Baxter,
Right, right.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member. Jeff Baxter was Ricky Don't Lose That Number,
Oh,
played the leads on that My Old School. I mean,
oh
on
yeah.
Bodhisattva. I mean, he's a brilliant guitar player. And so, there are just people from that scene that started here in the small recording studios and playing in the clubs and doing
Yeah.
a little this and doing that. This Boston, New England is a very, very
Fertile, yes, fertile ground.
fertile area, which
Yeah.
is kind of led me to my current endeavors.
Okay. That's where that came from. Okay. I was just looking because uh yeah, that's who it was. Okay. How about Ted Myers? Ted
Ted
Myers.
Myers, Ted Myers was at the Rathskeller
Okay.
when Burying the Remains
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and the Mods
Uh-huh.
and a group called The Lost played.
Right. Right.
Ted was the lead singer for The
Okay.
Lost. And
Uh-huh.
then he got into the third version of The Ultimate
Ultimate
Spinach
spinach, yes. Yeah.
and with the guitar player,
Uh-huh.
Jeff Skunk Baxter. So
Right,
we've
right.
all remained
Yeah.
friendly.
Right. That's who I talked with, Ted Myers. It's been a while now.
Oh
Ted,
yeah,
yeah,
Ted has a long, long,
yeah,
long
he
history.
does. And he was in Chameleon Church
That was another one
with
of the
with with who? With who? I know this.
of good Chevy Chase.
Yes. Who played what?
The drums.
Yes, the drums.
Yeah,
uh
so
yeah,
so
yeah.
again, there's this thread for
Right.
all of us that have
Right.
been around, have experienced great degrees of notoriety and success.
Right.
And it's been an exciting journey. Now I'm wondering if you're going to end this interview, this chat on my current endeavor.
Yes, I would like to do that. Speak briefly about, well, you had a couple of reunion shows I wanted to touch on. 2003, a reunion for the mods.
Yeah, that was just fun. Yeah, that
Okay.
was great. We rented a hall, and it was well, the original guitar player, that kid that was 14, passed away.
Okay.
And we got another guitar player that we've known from the surf 50
Yeah.
years, 40 years earlier.
Okay.
And we did 3, 4, 5 shows and had a great time. We
Okay.
really, really had a great time. We did a show, a sold out show at a theater with opening for Burying the Remains. It was one of those
All
type of
right.
shows. And, we're all friends still,
Yeah.
and it was fun, but it really truly has a life of its own, a beginning and a middle and end. You can only go
Yeah.
just so far with it. And so that ended. Same thing happened with Orpheus. We put together an Orpheus Reborn, and that
Yeah.
was 3 of the 4 guys.
Yes.
And we did a number of shows and opened up for a number of people.
Right.
All just great experiences, just but they do have a beginning and a middle and an end at this point in life.
Yeah. Well, talk about briefly how you became involved in the lecture agency.
Well, and got married, had a kid, moved out of LA, moved to Florida, hated it, and then I decided to not go back to LA and turned to my wife and I said, "Hey, um, you ever been to Boston, really?" She goes, "No." I said, "Well, I grew up there. Let's go up there and look around. It might be a good place for me to return to and to have our son grow up." We came up here and we really loved it. And so I needed a job. I turned to a friend of mine who knew somebody else and I called them. and they knew who I was. Once again, my past had followed me, and they thought it would be great, and they hired me to head up their corporate department, arranging lectures. And over the course of my career, 22 years, I've booked and been with Archbishop Desmond Tutu, President Mikhail Gorbachev, astronaut Neil Armstrong, athletes, Jimmy Brown. I mean, just for Harry Belafonte, actors, actresses. I mean, I've booked all these big names, no names, politicians, to all kinds of different functions, and created a program with Jeff Baxter on outside the box thinking. And so to this day, I actually still represent Jeff Baxter. Look
Do
at
you?
that, all the way back to
Yeah.
1969,
Yeah.
all the way back to 1969. And
Yeah.
we're still close, and I still book him to
Wow.
corporations to talk
Yeah.
about innovation and outside the box thinking and
Wow.
problem solving.
Yeah. Now that would be somebody I would love to visit with. Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant.
Oh yeah, I imagine so. He's got
A true Renaissance man.
lot of stories to tell. Oh,
Oh,
great. Yeah. Right.
right. So, I did that for quite 22 years. And over that period of time, I ran into some people that had started an online archive called dirtywater.com.
Okay.
And it was primarily Boston rock and roll only, just Boston rock and roll. And a number of us got involved in an advisory capacity. And so when that ran its course, that advisory group sat down and said, there's a bigger calling than just Boston rock and roll.
Mhm.
So a group of us put together an organization that I now am the president of,
Mhm.
called the Music Museum of New England.
Oh, okay.
The Music Museum of New England, mmone.org.
That's what that stands for. Okay.
That's a Music Museum, right, of New England.
Okay.
Is a wonderful archive. It has taken that original concept of archiving Boston rock and rollers. Oh, here's the Cars, and here's Willie Alexander, and here's this one and that one. It was very much like this.
Yeah.
But in understanding New England as somebody like me who's been around all of these, I mean, there's more stories about more people, but me and 3 other people decided to start this archive.
Right.
Here it is, 20 years later.
Yeah.
The other 3 people have actually moved along, and I have the pleasure of being the president of this organization. And I have assembled a team of writers, editors, tech people, lawyers, contributing writers, and we are closing in on over 1,000 pages of people that either started here and germinated their style and moved along, or they came here like Bonnie Raitt did, and she became discovered here and then moved on. And we have identified the places that people played that contributed. Because if you don't have the Rathskeller, if
Yeah.
you don't have the Surf, you don't have any place for people to learn how to be a performer as well as a musician.
Yeah.
So we have put together an archive that pays homage to the DJs, the business people that discovered some of these bands, the managers, the places that they've played. There's a section for people that have been to shows, had interesting experiences. You can write a story, and it's called You Too. It's you. It's not my museum. It's your museum.
Right.
So you can add to your museum with a
Right.
story about, oh man, I remember smoking a doobie with so and so out in the back hall. And people just like I remember
Yeah.
the Rolling Stones at the Manning Bowl in 1966.
Mhm. Yeah.
People have stories,
That's
and
it.
they have a place, and this
See?
is a place to give back for me personally, for
Yeah.
me to, life has been good. I'm really blessed, and I'm really thankful, and I'm really grateful.
Yeah. Well, I have to say this, Harry, we're on the same page there. Definitely, because in my own small way, that's what my channel's about.
Yeah,
It's
well,
it's about giving back.
it's acknowledging others.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
about others. And so
That's what it's
this
a
is,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
this has become a way to give back
Right. Right.
what was so rich to me.
Right.
I'm a blessed guy.
Yeah.
The stories could go on and on forever and ever. And, because you take chances,
Yeah.
you fall down, you stand
Yeah.
up, you learn from them, people are kind to you. So it's kind of nice to try to be nice and shed a light on others that have been at some place that I've been at in my life.
Right. Right. Yeah. And all the music that I've, been fortunate enough to discover myself, I like to give that back, and share that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Uh,
it's a good way, it's just a good way to give,
yeah. Yeah.
it's just a good way to give.
Yeah.
So we're on our 20th year. We have opened an online store. We People make donations. It's a totally
Yeah.
uh, volunteer driven, not for profit, federally tax ID'd organization. And we're still cranking out pages, and the writing has gotten better. The
Yeah.
writers, more detail. I mean, when we started, it was like a paragraph.
Uh,
Now the pieces are growing, more detail. It's not Wikipedia. It's a combination of Wikipedia line items of, yeah, well, here's the 6 albums that so and so did, and here's the 12 albums that this one did, but it's also got a lot to say about who these people are.
right. Right.
And it puts a little meat on the bone.
That's right. It's more personal. Yeah. Which is what I enjoy.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've took a
Yeah, well,
sneak.
tell the audience, tell people the website.
The audience should know that if you go to your computer and plug in www.mmone.org, MMONE stands for Music Museum of New England, you will come upon this archive, and it'll give you a lot of information about people that from the world of music. And you'll be surprised that Taj Mahal grew up here.
Yeah.
He comes from Springfield. Tracy Chapman was discovered here.
Yeah.
Tedeschi Trucks, Susan Tedeschi. A lot of information. A lot of people started here.
Yeah.
So we're proud of what we do, and I hope that all of your viewers will be
You
proud.
you should be. You should be, Harry. It's well worth venture for sure. And
Thank
keeping
you.
it alive, keeping the music alive. That's
Well, yeah, I mean, I just think that it's important to, some of these people have given us a lot. They've given us a lot, and we love their music,
yes,
but it's kind of nice to know a little bit more about some people. I
right.
didn't know that. Oh
Yeah,
my God.
yep. That's right.
And it's just, yeah,
Yeah,
this is,
right.
and some of the writers that contribute to us, they really do their work. They peel
Yeah,
back, they look for that interesting story. They look for something that sets that piece apart from every other piece.
that's
So
it.
I
That's
hope your viewers enjoy it.
yeah, and that's what I'm about here is those stories, like you said, you know,
Yeah,
and
it's not whoever has the most toys wins.
uh,
It's whoever has the best stories wins.
there you go. Yes, amen to that. I like that very much.
So
All
keep
right, well,
creating stories.
right, all the time, you know.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll end it there, Harry. That's a nice way to jump off on this, and I appreciate again your time and for visiting and sharing those stories. And all the best to you. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me. I appreciate it. It's always, I don't do a lot of these anymore. I certainly have done my share over the years, but it's kind of fun and nice to revisit
Yes, it is.
these times,
I,
those,
and I never get tired of it. I never get my so I guess that's something good to be said about me doing these. I just don't get tired. Yeah.
my wife does.
Oh, does she?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah, I know, I
maybe
know.
we should hook your wife up with mine. You get them together because she she doesn't grasp the concept. She just
Yeah, right. It's like,
she doesn't
thanks,
get it.
hon.
She doesn't.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Love you,
yeah.
hon. Well, you take
You know,
care of yourself.
all right, we'll do, Harry, and I will send you again a copy of this once I get it edited a little bit. You know which
Awesome.
parts we're gonna cut out.
You know what? There's nothing that I wouldn't
Yeah.
repeat anywhere. I've left out the stories that I knew I wanted.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Maybe best, right?
Absolutely. So
All
take
right.
care of yourself.
All right. You too, Harry, and
All right.
we'll be in touch. Okay.
You bet.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye for now.